Blog Talk Radio.
Paranormal Review Radio.
Hello and welcome, everyone. Happy Memorial Day weekend. It is Friday night, and you are listening to Paranormal Review Radio with your host, Anthony Agati in New York.
And me, Lucy Liebfried from Chicago. We are so happy that you're here with us tonight. Our chat room is up and running, so feel free to further discuss the topic or to ask a question. You can also call in with your questions to 661-244-9831. Make sure you press the number 1 to get into the queue. And if you lose sound on your player, just refresh your page or log back in. You can also send us an email at paranormalreviewradio@yahoo.com. And don't forget to check us out on our Facebook show page.
We have a very special guest tonight. Sallie Ann Glassman is an initiated voodoo priestess who calls up and mediates the power of the spirit. Sallie is internationally recognized for her lectures, art, readings, and healing ceremonies. She is one of a handful of Americans ordained into voodoo in the traditional Haitian initiation. Sallie is passionate about sharing the rich spiritual and cultural heritage of voodoo. Often maligned and misunderstood, voodoo is actually a healing and life-affirming religion. This ancient religion, currently practiced by 50 million people, speaks directly to our troubled world today. She believes that to discover voodoo is to embark on an encounter with divine mystery. Sallie owns the Island of Salvation Botanica, a store and gallery specializing in voodoo religious supply, medicinal herbs, and Haitian and local artwork. The shop was awarded the Best of City Award by National Geographic Traveler in 2004. As artist and writer, Sallie has done much to further the understanding of voodoo. She is the author of the widely acclaimed book Voodoo Visions, published by Random House. She is the co-creator and artist for the New Orleans Voodoo Tarot and the illustrator of the Enochian Tarot. A captivating and powerful speaker, Sallie is frequently invited to lecture on voodoo at universities and conferences. In New Orleans, she performs annual public ceremonies for St. John's Eve on Bayou St. John, the public hurricane prevention ceremony, and for the Day of the Dead. Sallie has been featured in numerous publications such as the New York Times, the Los Angeles Times, the Wall Street Journal, and the New Yorker. She has appeared on CNN, National Public Radio, CBS News, the Discovery Channel, and the World News Tonight with Peter Jennings. Sallie Ann is co-creator and co-chairman of the board of the New Orleans Healing Center, whose 3 goals include bring healing to the downtown neighborhoods of New Orleans on all levels of sustainability, physical, mental, emotional, educational, economic, environmental, and spiritual. She also unifies formerly polarized communities and bring economic revitalization to the St. Cloud corridor of New Orleans. We are extremely excited to be speaking with such a profound and highly regarded member of the Voodoo family. Please help me in welcoming Sallie Ann Glassman to the show. Hi, Sallie. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you for that build-up intro. Wow. I'm impressed. I'd like to know this person.
Yes.
Well, Sallie, welcome to the show. You know, it really is a pleasure to have you here on the show with us. Now, you're originally from Maine and from a Jewish family at that. How did you find the path of voodoo and get to where you are now?
It's a path that finds you, and I think people come from all kinds of walks of life.
Can
you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I think it's a path that finds you. I think the road rises to meet you, in other words, and I certainly was not thinking that I was setting off on a Vodou path when I came to New Orleans. All I knew was that I was living in my cousin's unheated barn in Kennebunkport, and it was October 1st and about 20 degrees, and I knew I had to go somewhere. And my brother called and said that he had gotten a job teaching at Tulane University in New Orleans, and something in my head just said voodoo and jazz would be really interesting. So the next day, I got on a plane with my dog and my bird and went to New Orleans, and voodoo and jazz were really interesting. I think that I was someone who was born with the spirit. I always saw the world in terms of what was beneath the visible surface, and always saw things as kind of fluid and flows of energy. And I didn't know that was unusual. I just had nothing to compare it to. So when I came to New Orleans, and a couple days later ran into a guy who called himself Andre the Martinican, who was the most psychic person I've ever met. And he was working at the Voodoo Museum in New Orleans, and he kind of took me under his wing and taught me a few things, largely about observation. And gradually over time, I just became increasingly engaged and involved. And I don't know if y'all are hearing these recordings that I'm getting. It's causing me to kind of stutter here. But at any rate, I eventually started working with directly with the voodoo spirits, the Loa, and doing artwork around them and doing spontaneous artwork around them and letting them guide my hand and my eye. When we did the New Orleans Voodoo Tarot, we did ceremonies for each of the spirits, and I wouldn't know when I sat down to draw something what it was going to be until the final stroke of the pastel chalk. It was an incredible experience, and my little studio was just full of these beings and these energies. And when the Voodoo Tarot was published, I met a woman who lived in my neighborhood who was president of a voodoo temple in Haiti, in Port-au-Prince that year, and she asked me to come with her to experience a ceremony. When I went to her house to discuss the details, the phone rang, and it was a man in Port-au-Prince saying, well, we've thrown on this, and why don't you just come down and initiate? And I literally didn't know any better, so I said, okay, and got on the plane and went to Port-au-Prince and initiated. I thought they were going to do a preliminary initiation, but they initiated me to the level of Mambo Asagwe, which is High Priestess.
Wow. Well, you know what? In an interview, I heard, and you briefly touched on it, you spoke about being able to see spirits from an early age. So now that you've followed the path into voodoo, and now that you are a Mambo, I'm assuming the connection with the spirits still exists. To what level is that connection?
Well, it's on every level, and that's one of the things that I do love about voodoo. It's not something that you do on Sundays for a couple hours. It's a way of looking at the world and a way of experiencing the world and relating to it and interchanging with it. I keep saying to people that it's quantum physics on the human scale, that things are not so solid as they seem. There's not the physical as opposed to the non-physical. This is all stuff it's all mixed up together. And for instance, my papa, the man who initiated me, Edgar, would do readings, and he would use a regular playing deck. And I would translate for him because he only spoke Haitian Creole. So he'd be reading, and then he'd stop. And people would say to me, well, what's going on? What's he doing? And he was listening. He was waiting for the answer. He would speak to the Loa, to the spirits, and ask them what he should say next, and they would tell him. And he was literally hearing them saying it, and then he would tell the person what the reading said. And when he did healings, it was at the same level, that it was his hands doing the healing, but he was letting the Loa tell him where to put them and how to address the illness. I would take him to Mardi Gras, and he would be sitting there with everybody talking around him, and I could see the look in his eyes that he was seeing a spirit, he was seeing a loa and having a conversation with them. And lo and behold, he would look up and say, yeah, there's Aizan, or whichever one he was talking to.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the more that you give yourself over to this and the less you have to separate things in order to make life more manageable, more convenient, because it is very distracting and it's somewhat alienating, I think, to be that open to all the rest of what's going on in the invisible, which is much bigger, it's much more beautiful, it's much more powerful, but it makes it a little hard to negotiate the day-to-day. And it takes some getting used to. So the more you work with it, the more you develop relationships with these energies, these loa, the more clear they are and the more lively and fluent the conversation.
Wow. You know what? Voodoo does have its roots in Africa, and traditionally it's been practiced by people of color, including some Native Americans. So please, forgive me for asking this, but I really find this so amazing and wonderful. You are one of the very few white Americans who has been ordained as a mambo. And what exactly does it mean to be a priestess?
It means a lot of things, and I continuously find out more about what it means. I think you touched on a lot of different subjects very briefly, and I would say that, just to clarify, Vodou does have its roots in African traditions. It mingled through slavery with Native Americans, with European Catholics, and with Masons, oddly enough. And the Masons brought their sense of mystery and magic and Kabbalah, all these different elements. So it really is a gumbo, and it has the tendency to add to itself the different cultures that it encounters. That still goes on. It still transforms and assembles different beliefs and different outlooks and different traditions, all within this one gumbo religion. Mm-hmm. So there are an awful lot of different elements. A friend of mine, Darius James, who's a writer, always said that you start with what you know and it just grows from there. And so I don't think anybody is exempt. In other words, it almost doesn't matter where you come from. I've had conversations with Ungans and Mambos in Haiti and told them that this is a big issue here in the United States, that, for instance, I'm white and Jewish, and what am I doing messing around with this religion? Mm-hmm. And they've had big conferences in Port-au-Prince about this, and they eventually wrote a epistle, and the epistle went on and on about the history of Haiti, the history of slavery, very beautiful, moving stuff. And I thought, well, their conclusion is going to be that I don't share this history. But their final conclusion was, that doesn't mean you can't practice Vodou. You could be a Muslim, you could be a Muslim, you could be a Jew, you could be anything. And we're all in humanity. This is all stuff that's common to all of us, and we recognize because we're human beings. My friend Darius also said an extraordinary thing, which was that the whole point of voodoo is to drop your identity in the face of the divine. That's what happens during possession trance, and your ego just goes away for the time being, and something greater than you comes through, and something archetypal comes through you and expresses through your body, and you're capable of things that you yourself are not capable of. And it's a real relief to be able to drop that ego and drop that identity. I think that's also the whole point of going through the very intense initiation in Haiti, which takes about 6 days, that everything that you use to identify yourself on every level, physical and emotional and psychological and spiritual, gets stripped away from you. And in order to get through it, you've got to take up a different power. And you've got to be able to give yourself over in service to something that's much bigger than you are. That whole idea that the invisible is this beautiful ocean, and it's huge, and it's so much bigger than the surface of things, and it's got so much more power and potential, and it's much more full of life. But we're kind of intimidated to go there. We cling to our identities, and it's our identity that limits us. I also think that just like quantum physics, are principles about reality. This is how the world is made up. This is what matter is. You don't have to be Einstein or really understand string theory, for instance, for it still to be going on and still be the way the world is ordered, and that we're all working within these principles. So I think the same is true of Vodou, that what we're talking about here is what the world is, what is spirit, what is matter, what is the relationship between the visible and the invisible, and these principles and formulas are simply true. So it doesn't matter what you think your story is, or where you come from, or what color your skin is. This is how the world is ordered. This is how it works. Mm-hmm. And so it's a truth. It's the way things are, and it's always going to be the way things are. And you have a part in that. And who are we to tell the Loa, to tell the invisible, that we're not going to participate because we come from the wrong country or whatever? For the same reason, I do acknowledge that I'm American. I'm not Haitian. I'm vegan. I'm not a meat eater, so I don't sacrifice animals. I don't do things exactly the same way as they're done in Port-au-Prince. My Papa Edgar would always say that voodoo is practiced differently in each country that it's practiced, and that's reasonable. It's different places. It's different histories. And I've noticed that even in Port-au-Prince, in this one city, and even in one neighborhood in Port-au-Prince, in Bel Air, and even one temple to the next, everybody does things differently. There's no rule book. There's no pope. There's no church authority. It was a religion that was created by slaves who were on isolated plantations, and they were from different countries, and some traditions are practiced one way in one of these plantations and a slightly different way in another plantation. It's all recognizable. It's all part of the same reality. But there's endless room for differences. And one of the charming things to me about Haitians and about the Haitian worldview is that things can be an opposite, but they don't oppose one another. They don't make each other wrong. So as a dumb American, I could sit there and ask them a very simple, straightforward question that would have one clear answer. And there might be 8 different people telling me 8 different answers, and all of them nodding in agreement with one another, because these are all just aspects of God's energy, just all true.
That's beautiful.
Right, that is beautiful and very profound. And I mean, when you're talking about this, the spiritual aspect, there really isn't one true answer. I would assume that it's more so about the connection between the individual and the spirit, and so naturally you'd have those differences.
Mm-hmm. And one of the other things that my Papa Edgar said to me that was so profound, simple, and beautiful was I was asking him all kinds of questions about some particular Loa, one of the spirits, and what does he like, what does he do? And he looked at me and he said, you'll know the Loa, you'll understand the Loa as they possess people, and you'll understand them through that person's subconscious. So each person that's carrying one of these spirits, each person that's been possessed and acts and speaks with them, is going to be a slightly different aspect, but always recognizable. You know who you're talking to. And I liken it to really great theater. that Mel Gibson's Hamlet is going to be really different than Sir John Gielgud's Hamlet, even though they're saying the same words and it's the same story, and we know it's Hamlet, but it's coming through that person and being aspected. It's really fascinating stuff.
It is. I mean, that's to me, it's beautifully profound. And I think it's even bigger than anything that we can even imagine. Now, Sallie, we've done other shows about voodoo. We've done one other show, actually, on voodoo before, and this topic and this subject is very new to me. And we pretty much brushed the surface before. But the most apparent thing is the perception of voodoo and what it really is. And many seem to place a negative or sort of dark force on it. Can you explain what it is voodoo is to you and the feeling of voodoo to counteract those perceptions of it being sort of taboo and dark?
Yeah. Well, let me first say where some of those perceptions come from. And I think it's shocking for people when they know the actual history of this, that the Spanish Inquisition took the same vilifying images that they used to castigate the Jews and applied it to Afro-Caribbeans. So it's the same stuff, that they have depraved orgies, that they murder children and eat them, on and on. They tear off their clothes, and, all the same stuff, and applied it to Afro-Caribbeans. So from that point forward, even Victorian journalists were expecting something lurid in the practices, and they saw enough of what their own imaginations came up with that it sort of affirmed for them that this is what was happening. When I think about the absurdity of it, that they would complain that scantily dressed voodoo practitioners, the women had their slips on, and I think they were slaves. What were they supposed to have on except the rags that they were allowed to wear? Of course they had nothing on. And having been to voodoo ceremonies, which are beautiful, they don't involve any pins and dolls or horrible spells and nastiness. None of that happens. There's no orgies that go on. People are extremely polite, for one thing, very respectful. The first words you say when you enter into a ceremony are respect and honor. They involve just absolutely beautiful and astoundingly powerful drumming and music, singing, choirs and dancing. It's just gorgeous, and beautiful art forms, altars everywhere. And these are people that didn't speak the same language. They were from different countries. So music and rhythm and dance and art forms became language, and that language was more universally understandable because it didn't actually involve words so much. It wasn't about theory, it was about experience. I think a lot of people, especially in the West, are very intimidated by the just raw exposure of voodoo. You can't hide in front of the spirit. You got no secrets. And here is somebody who doesn't even know you, and they're possessed by some spirit telling you everything about yourself and telling you where your issues lie and where your challenges lie. And, God help you if you're posturing or pretending or trying to hide who you are. It's going to come out. It's going to be exposed. And I think that is very intimidating for Westerners. We're quite inhibited, and we like to keep our secrets in place. And we think that we want spirit to come close, and we're afraid of letting it come close because it's an awfully raw experience. And I think also, ultimately, slavery was a terrible thing. It was a terribly wrong thing to do. And it's just human nature that instead of owning what we've done wrong and owning that was bad and shameful, we project onto the other and make them bad and shameful. So we make these heathen natives who have gone wild and are berserk and do depraved things when slavery was depraved. That's a completely inhuman thing to do. and it's sunk in. I know that after the Civil War, when, for instance, the Americans came into New Orleans, they ridiculed people that were voodoo practitioners. And if they would go to a ceremony, say Marie Laveau was holding a ceremony on St. John's Eve, the names of the people who were there would appear in the paper the next day. So there was a lot of intimidation through humiliation and simple embarrassment that caused a lot of the deep practice to go underground. And it's really, I think, criminal that for most, say, African-American Baptists, voodoo seems like a big, terrible, bad thing, when in fact it's culture and it's tradition and it's something that would be empowering. So I struggle a lot with that, especially through the Healing Center, that the Healing Center has become associated with voodoo through me because I'm one of the principals in the Healing Center. And you hear comments like, I don't want to go there because that's a voodoo place and I'm a Baptist, so I'm not going to go there. And we've really struggled to have, like our Sacred Music Festival in March, to bring an interfaith understanding, and that you don't even have to be of any faith to participate in healing, but that voodoo is entirely about healing. It's entirely about bringing balance and constellating ourselves in a way that's wholesome and holistic and that serves the world. And voodoo is precisely the opposite of the negative images that are cast against it.
Now, your Healing Center and you are actually based in New Orleans, which, of course, is basically the home of voodoo for the United States. And you know, aside from the rich history of New Orleans, which New Orleans has a ton of rich history, why do you think that voodoo has thrived all these years within New Orleans itself?
There are a lot of reasons, and I think that essentially New Orleans is a Caribbean city. We always joke about it being the northernmost capital of the third world, and I think there's a lot of truth to that. I think that partially because New Orleans was a French colony and later taken over by the Spanish and back to the French, and because the French were importing slaves from Africa, there's just a very strong African presence here. Also that after the Haitian Revolution, 10,000 refugees came to New Orleans from Haiti via Cuba, and these were slaves, slave owners, free people of color, the whole mix. 10,000 people came into New Orleans, and it doubled the population of the city and absolutely reinforced the presence of Vodou. And to this day, or at least until Katrina, the demographics may have changed a little, but a third of New Orleans' population is of Haitian origins, including two of our mayors, the Morials, where their family was Haitian. And Vodou and Haitian traditions are absolutely woven through the fiber of the city. It's in the Mardi Gras Indians' dance steps and sequined costumes and beaded work, and it's in the architecture, it's in the food we eat and our cuisine. It's in the graveyard displays where you'll see computer keyboards because people are still communicating with their dead ancestors. New Orleans very much dances to a different drummer, and in an increasingly generic world, New Orleans remains unique. Also, that when the Americans took over the city, they actually made life even harder for the slaves. They had even greater restrictions, but they allowed them to congregate on Sundays on a square called Congo Square, which is now in Louis Armstrong Park. And they could congregate on Sundays and hold dances. I don't think anyone knows whether those dances were actually voodoo ceremonies, but certainly the drum rhythms were significant. The songs that were sung and continue to be sung, the Creole songs are sacred, and they contain all the knowledge Vodou encoded within the music, within the rhythms. And so the tradition survived. It had to go underground, as I said, after the Civil War, but is still existent here. And the strains of it, I mean, in jazz music, in the blues, it's really throughout our story and the way that we express ourselves here. And I do believe that the presence of Vodou made it possible for the city and the people of the city to survive Katrina and reimagine ourselves and find the resilience and the courage and the creativity to recreate the city.
Well, you know what? In doing the research, I did find some information about your mentor, Edgar John Louis. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us about him? He just sounds so fascinating.
He was a remarkable old man, and I first met him when I went to Haiti to initiate, and I was sitting in the back seat of a little sports car. We went to the Bel Air neighborhood to pick Edgar up, and Bel Air is one of the most blighted, I guess you could say, slums in the Western Hemisphere. It was really hard to tell what was rubble, what was buildings, just terrible conditions. And I'm sitting in the back of this little sports car, just a tad nervous, not knowing what I was going to be in for. And this impossibly tall and thin man folded himself down into the seat next to me. And Edgar was very dark-skinned, had these glittery eyes and gaunt cheekbones. He was about 7 feet tall. And he sat down and he looked at me, and I just thought, this man is never again going to be out of my consciousness. And I can say that's absolutely true. He's been somewhere in my psyche ever since. He was extraordinarily gifted. He was a very fine flag maker, a sequin flag maker. So he's an artist. He knew thousands of sacred Creole songs. He was a funeral director, and he carved furniture, and he was so quick-witted and down-to-earth at the same time. He was hilariously funny and perceptive. And he took one look at me and started calling me his daughter, and he became my papa. And over, I don't know what it was, 15, 18 years, we really had a special bond. And he, one time, said to me, I'm going to give you everything I know. And he did. He gave me his notebook that a new priest writes by hand when you initiate, and he gave me everything he knew. He would come here, I would go there, and we initiated people together, and he was just an amazing guy. A lot of times you have a spiritual mentor, and they're all too human. Edgar was amazingly in touch with his humanity. He could laugh, he could be crazy, and he never let me down. He was so palpably in touch with spirit all the time. I remember one time walking through Bel Air, and there was a little girl, just filthy, and dressed in rags, standing on the corner, and I was thinking, this girl is never going to get out of Bel Air. This is the totality of her universe and the totality of her life. And Edgar walked over to her. He was so gentle and bent himself down in half because he was so tall, and he took her hands in his hands, and he just smiled, and he said hello to her, and her whole face lit up. And I thought, oh, my God, there's living proof that we're all absolutely special in the light of the Spirit. To have this magnificent old man, this fabulous priest, just reach down to this little insignificant girl and see the beauty and importance of her and the absolute value of her, and to just honor her for that moment. What an extraordinary thing. And he was always like that. Every one of the people in my voodoo house and my society all had the same thing to say, that when you walked into a room and Edgar was there, he would just light up. He was so happy to see you. and it was absolutely genuine and completely unconditional. And how often do you get that in life? It's an amazing thing.
Wow, he sounds magnificent. I mean, really, that's just so amazing. But one thing I did notice from the research is that a big part of your focus is on education for others about the religion. And you did mention about how, the practice has been done mainly behind closed doors. With your work, has this changed? Are people becoming more accepting of it?
Oh, absolutely. I think awareness of what the religion really is vastly increasing. I've even had there's a wonderful artist, a Haitian artist that lives here in New Orleans, and he shows up at lectures that I'm doing or ceremonies that I'm doing periodically. And one day he came up to me and he said, people used to ask me what was my religion, and I'd say I'm Catholic, because he is Catholic, and most voodoo practitioners in Haiti are Catholic, as well as being voodoo practitioners. So he would always just say that he was Catholic, and he said, now I tell them it's voodoo. And he beamed at me, and it was a wonderful statement, and really, really warmed my heart. But I find that, we're living in an age when communication is possible on such a vast and instant scale that, I'll do a ceremony out in the street, and I initially started doing that because it didn't matter how much I argued with people or assured them that there was nothing evil about voodoo, unless they experienced it and realized that it felt like blessings, like nothing evil, that I wasn't going to be able to get through to them. So I started doing public ceremonies. And now you do a public ceremony and 100 people are tweeting and sending photos to Facebook, and that's going viral, and so the message gets out instantly to thousands of people. And I think that my responsibility and the responsibility of my house is to always address the ceremonies respectfully, with integrity, and to put our best face forward. It takes a lot of discipline on our part, because this is our religion, and it's a little difficult to have people gawking at you. So we try to get people engaged, to get people to actually participate. And so it's more of an interaction rather than being some kind of show. And it's really done wonders for all of us. I think we've all grown, and as a city, I noticed that people coming to the ceremony year after year after year are instructing the people next to them that have never been before, and kind of taking their hands and showing them how to do stuff. It's just beautiful.
Well, can voodoo be considered a pagan religion?
I would not consider it pagan, although it does recognize spirit and nature. And it is a religion in which you keep your body with you. You don't separate mind, body, and spirit. There are certainly elements of it that would resonate with pagans. It is actually a monotheistic religion and recognizes a God, but that God is just so vast and abstract that nobody tries to figure out what God is or say what God is or pinpoint that. And all of these intermediary ancestral spirits, who are both archetypal principles as well as forces of nature, are the go-betweens between God and humanity. So we're not worshiping them as gods, we're serving them as spirits. And we know them as people because they were once people. And they speak to our humanity. They help us navigate the really tumultuous waves of being human.
Now, Sallie, I can probably most guarantee you that if I were to walk up to somebody out on the street and ask them, maybe just a simple question about what does voodoo mean to you, I guarantee you I would probably get a response that would include the word spells and curses and voodoo dolls. Does voodoo include these things?
It really doesn't. in Haiti, they would recognize a difference between what they call a bakor, or a sorcerer or magician, and an ungan, or a priest. And the differences are pretty striking. That voodoo may incorporate what seems like magic. To a voodoo practitioner, it's absolutely natural. There's nothing really paranormal about it. This is truly like quantum physics. This is how it is. This is how the universe is ordered and how it works. And it's about aligning yourself with how it works. The basic principle in voodoo is that we as humans are participating and helping the forward progression of the world for the common good. It's very much about service to community and service to the spirit. And a bakor, on the other hand, would probably operate somewhat in secrecy, can be bought, for instance, is often using magical means to get power over someone else or to force someone's will to another person's will. They're not aligning with the moral authority of the spirit. They're commanding the spirit and applying forces in the world around us to their own personal desires, I guess you could say. Their work is faster, it is less long-lasting, it's quicker, and it's very magical and flashy and fiery. Whereas the religious practice is, I don't want to say gentler, but it's more in terms of fundamentals and making real change within the self so that the world seems changed rather than trying to change the world for ourselves. And I can give you an example that somebody wants someone to fall in love with them. So they might go to a bakor, a magician, and get a potion made that will force that person to fall in love with you. And instead, they might go to a voodoo priest, and a ceremony might be done, and maybe you're going to call on Sallie Ann, who's the spirit of love and beauty, and ask as a community that we develop the openness of heart to love ourselves so that we can draw in more loving energies into our lives. And it's slower and it takes a while, and it's about truly healing a part of yourself, which is not taking a pill. There's another example. It would be like taking a pill to heal yourself when in fact you probably need to make some life changes and look at what's really the source of disease and what can you readjust on a fundamental level to make yourself truly healthy and well. So the whole spell work thing is more about hoodoo or root work, which is a spellcraft. It's a practice of working with roots and spells, and that can sometimes involve medicinal work as well. And voodoo does often include aspects that would seem magical, and it certainly works with herbs and things that happen in the ceremonies might seem supernatural, but it's all within this this mystical context, a religious context, and a metaphysical framework. So the focus is very different.
That is a perfect example of what you just said. I mean, I love that metaphor or the simile of you saying that it's almost like taking a pill for an instant gratification other than going to or speaking to someone to work through your problems over a course of a period of time.
Yeah.
And
what I find through the voodoo experience is over time, as you're being possessed by different spirits with their own particular perspectives on the world. So one time it's Sallie Ann, and the whole world is about love, and you're looking at the world through rose-colored glasses, and the next time it's Ogu, who's a warrior, and everything's a battlefield, and there's hundreds of them. And as you go through all these experiences, it becomes very convincing that your way of seeing the world is just the way you see it. It's your interpretation. It's not the only reality that's out there. And over many of these experiences, it almost has the same effect as going to psychotherapy for a really long time.
Right.
And helps you to balance out the different parts of yourself. What's so healthy about Vodou is that none of these aspects of being, none of these aspects of our personalities and our way of being are deemed good or evil. They're just aspects of God's life force. So it's all sacred. Some of it's more turbulent than others. Some's more fiery. Some's more calmer, more benevolent, gentler, cooler. But it's all sacred. So instead of trying to suppress some part of yourself, you just bring it all into balance. And, of course, that's easier said than done, but that's the focus of the practice.
Now, you talked about the ceremonies within Voodoo, and the music that is used in the songs seems so powerful and yet at the same time so beautiful. Are these songs that have been sort of passed down, or do the law give us new songs and new music?
Both happen. And that's one of the beautiful things about Vodou is that it's certainly based in respect for the traditions. And some of these songs are very ancient and miraculously have been carried on through word of mouth, just people learning the songs as they grow up and keeping them. But some of them are new. And sometimes the Loa will show up and they'll teach you a song. And they just keep repeating it until people learn it. And, of course, they get slightly changed. And again, you go to different towns and different houses, and some of the words are going to be a little different, and maybe the melodies are a little different, but it's the same song, and you can trace it. And there's thousands of them.
Well, you know what, Sallie, I wanted to talk about your shop, the Island of Salvation Botanica. I'm half Cherokee, I'm half Mexican. So growing up, I saw botanicas in the neighborhood. I've visited them. I've been to one in New Orleans, and there are many different things that are in there. And some of the things are things that you can use to do. They seem to be related to particular Catholic saints, sometimes for a certain need or a petition. And one thing I really want to ask, I have a very deep connection with St. Teresa, and she's also associated with Oya. And to me, I found this connection very, very by accident. So I wanted to ask, is this how the Loa work with people, or can one consciously search out and make that connection with their own personal Loa?
I think that both happen, but I do think that it may seem to you like you're just going out and searching for a Loa, but really they're making themselves known to you. And it does happen that way, that something just sticks out of the universe, St. Teresa, whatever, and it triggers something for you. It calls to you. And it may take a while before you start to understand who she is and what she's saying. It's really like any kind of relationship. When you first meet, there's that moment where you're making a connection and you don't know why, and I just met this person. Why are they taking all of my attention like this? And it takes time. You just start to get to know the person, and the more you know, the more that's revealed, and the more you realize you either have in common or you don't. But I think very much it starts that way. I've always had an affinity for mermaids, loved them. And lo and behold, I've got La Sirène on my head, the mermaid. It's almost comical in some cases, or at least with me. When I first went to Haiti, I had just done ceremonies in the street to fight crime. We had an incredible crack cocaine ring here in the city, and the police at the time were collaborating with them, and so ultimately they were busted with 200 pounds of crack cocaine at the end of my street that the police had been warehousing for this guy. But we had done this ceremony out on the street to fight crime, and when I look back at it, it was probably a pretty crazily dangerous thing to do. It didn't occur to me at the time. This is what you do. And crime dropped 65% after we did it. Well, then I go to Haiti and I initiate, and they tell me that the Loa that rules over me, one of them is this warrior spirit, Ogu, and I thought, Ogu, what have I got to do with him? I'm not a warrior. And it suddenly dawned on me that I've been out in the street fighting crime with hundreds of people using Ogu. And that's who that was. So to me, it's almost comical how blind we are to the most simple message. And we're all desperately saying, give me a sign, give me a message, tell me I'm special, tell me that you care about me and that you've noticed me and that I matter. And the signs are there all the time. And they're pretty loud. It just takes us a while to hear them.
Yeah. Well, you know what? In watching films, I've watched a few films of rituals, and you can see what can only be described as the possession of the participants. And can the Loa actually speak with us this way? And can this union with the Loa harm anyone in any way?
I've never seen anybody be harmed by it, actually. I've seen 9-month pregnant women doing somersaults in midair and being just fine. I don't drink. I haven't drunk liquor since I was 21, I think. And I've been possessed and drunk entire bottles of liquor and not been drunk afterwards. I think that when you approach them with sincerity and honesty, they just simply don't hurt you. I don't think they're here to hurt us. I think they get upset with us when we're trying to avoid our own truth, if we're trying to hide from the truth of ourselves. I think that they can make the path pretty rough and shake us up. I mean, that happens naturally anyway. That, for instance, if you go out and become a crack addict, you're going to have a pretty hard time. Your health is going to suffer, and you're going to lose family and friends, and so on and so forth. You know, is it the Loa doing it? Is it our own actions to ourselves? I don't think the question really matters even. But I have seen people who are being mounted. It's referred to as the gods or divine riders who are mounting horses, and the person who's possessed is a horse. I've seen some pretty turbulent rides because the person was simply unprepared and was fighting it. It can be pretty scary at first. And that's the point of initiating, so that you can handle this crisis of self-awareness more easily, and so that you can more completely have the authority to agree to the possession or not. So by the time you've initiated, it's a lot easier to let it happen and to get comfortable with the ride and to say yes or no to it.
Well, Sallie, how does voodoo fit in today's world? I mean, you know, I guess standing amongst all the other major organized religions, how does voodoo stand between all of them, and how do you see voodoo in the future? Well,
to a voodooist, it's all voodoo, that everybody's doing it all the time, whether they realize it or not, and everything is voodoo. It's all part of this invisible world of spirit. And I think that even in terms of science is coming closer and closer to the same understanding of things. I think that there's always going to be a struggle between religions that have to define themselves, say, at the expense of another religion. You know, I'm in the light of God, so you can't be, because you're not in the same religion as me. Voodoo takes a very different stance than that. And so the trouble that it runs into is coming from other religions, not from its own attitude. I think that I'm encouraged because, for instance, we have an interfaith space in our healing center, and we've called meetings with over 60 faith leaders, and there were 16 or 18 different religions being represented, including Voodoo, including Catholicism, Judaism, Muslims, Baha'i people, Buddhists, Wiccans, everything, pagans, some atheists. There was a Zoroastrian there. There's an amazing array, Native Americans, everybody. and there was no trouble. I thought we were going to start World War III, and instead, as a community, everybody was so positively focused, it was mind-blowing. And as a community, we all decided that rather than trying to have the symbolism for each religion represented in this room on our roof, that we would have a space that was filled with literally nothing but silence and space. And it's beautiful, and anybody can go up there at any time and meditate or center themselves. So it's, I've been doing this for a long time, and I'm close to 60, and I'm making some headway. And then 2 days later, someone will tell me that Baptists won't walk into the healing center because it's voodoo. So you take a step forward and you take a step back. I do believe that voodoo is one of the fastest growing religions in the world, and that it's crossing racial lines and national lines, and it's all because we recognize it as a religion that shows us how to be better humans and how to live better within the world and how to see more in it and how to respond to a different authority. There's always going to be people who are clutching hold of their little rock of reality so tightly that they're always going to think that voodoo is evil and that they've got to protect the world from this terrible evil. There are even people within Vodou who are absolute fundamentalists, and if you turn left instead of turning right, you're all wrong and inauthentic and fraudulent, and they're going to protect the Loa from you. So that, those battles rage on if you choose to engage in them. For me, it's about walking my talk and doing what I do and standing up for that and refusing to be defined by other people's fear.
Now, your book, the Voodoo Visions, has been highly recommended in every review that I've read. Can this book benefit anyone, even introductory beginners who are just curious on the topic, or is it geared towards the experienced devotee?
No, it's absolutely for everybody, and I think that a lot of the material that's in there was the original material when Louis Martin and I sat down to do the New Orleans Voodoo Tarot, and we did those ceremonies for each of the cards. And this was the information that the Loa presented about themselves, and it is mystical in nature. So it's not for everybody. There are some people that are going to want the rules and regulations in there, and this isn't what I know about, but it's mystical stuff, and it's inspired. But it does include a whole, like a beginner's intro to what voodoo is, what the principles are. And I think that it comes across straightforward enough and simple enough because it is such a vast and deeply mystical subject. Because voodoo is experiential and not so theoretic, it has to express in those terms. You just dive in and you start feeling your way through it and letting it interact with you. And there are going to be some people that are really put off by that. But for those people who want to touch and be touched by spirit and are ready to do that, I think it's a great way to begin, because you're bringing yourself with you in all of your experience. And as Daria said, you start with what you know, and it just grows. I mean, you might have known Saint Teresa as the patron saint of small things, and then come to find out she's Oya. So you start with what draws you and what speaks to you, and you slowly build a relationship.
Yes, I can see that, and I can feel that. But you know what, Sallie? Healing seems to be such a big part of the religion. And on our previous show, we had the word surrender come up in regards to voodoo. Now, in order to heal and to blossom, is there a need to surrender? And what would you say that we're surrendering to?
I think there is a sense of surrender, and there's in the feminine sense of surrender. and a sense of agreeing to be what you are and where you are, and allowing the fullness of each moment to come upon you, I guess you could say. Even being able to share your body with some other energy is a very feminine surrender. And I think that may be one of the reasons why women are so strong in the religion, and why they have the same authority and the same roles as men in the religion. I don't know that there's even really a fight there that you have to surrender to. I don't think it's necessary. And we construct all that stuff, and so ultimately the surrender isn't to anything. It's a surrender within ourselves, to allow ourselves to expand beyond the limitations that we've placed upon ourselves. And that's my experience with possession as well, that instead of it being, we think of Linda Blair's head spinning around and spewing junk and screaming and she's possessed by the devil, instead of it being a limiting and a compression down and a blotting out of the self, what I've found is it's an expansion beyond what I think are my limitations and my boundaries. So you just allow yourself to expand beyond that. And it really is a moment of just giving into it and stopping the battle and stopping the fight. So I guess in that sense it is a surrender.
Now, you've been very instrumental in rebuilding of New Orleans after Katrina, and I continue to do so. And we've asked this question before, and I wanted to ask you as well. Did Katrina open up maybe any new energies, and has the healing of the physical and spiritual damage been complete?
I think that healing is ongoing and always will be. I think that's why it's healing. We're not healed. It was funny, when we first named the New Orleans Healing Center the New Orleans Healing Center, every few months there'd be a whole new debate about the name, and people were freaked out about the word healing. Just drove them crazy and affronted them, and they'd say, oh, that's so negative. It's like, what is negative about healing? Being in the active state of healing. And if we were already healed, we'd be in really great shape right now, and we're not. So, there was a tremendous amount of traumatic stress. There were an awful lot of people that died, a lot of people who lost everything. And to me, it was very much a reflection of what the whole slave experience must have been like, that here you're taken out of your home, your community, your position in society. You lost your family, you lost everything that you used to identify yourself and give yourself place. And we weren't thrown into slave ships, and we weren't forced to do manual labor, but we were extracted from everything we knew, and 500,000 people had to just fall into the arms of spirit. And I think that it was an extraordinary experience of being aware that you're alive, and nothing's more spiritual than that. So Katrina also, that's an intense shaking up. And Katrina also, there were many things that were really wrong and really unjust in New Orleans society before the storm. And there was a pretty strong old guard and pretty strong status quo here, and that got shaken up enough that truly revolutionary things could happen here, including the Healing Center. There is no way on earth that a public-private partnership could have brought together $13 million to build a healing center on St. Claude Avenue before Katrina. That would not have happened, and nobody would have thought to do that even. So the entire school system in New Orleans has been utterly revamped. We had one of the worst school systems in the country, and it's gone almost entirely charter, and now is amongst the best. And that makes a huge difference in a place. It got incredibly depressing around here progressively the 3 years after Katrina, and by the third year it was dismal. It's really in death throes. And then the Saints won the Super Bowl, and we got a new mayor. It was Mardi Gras. And it all turned around. It just completely turned around. And right now, I mean, there's still lots that needs fixing and lots that needs to be worked out, and many things that are perplexing. But it's the healthiest I've ever seen the city, and I've been here since 1976. It's the most full of possibility and potential and energy, and it's an incredible thing to see, and much deserved. When Katrina happened, there was a dialogue in the country that was saying that New Orleans had no value, it was worthless, and it should be allowed to drown. And now we're just a vital, booming city. It's incredible.
Well, you know what? We're definitely coming to New Orleans this year.
Yay!
I've been here twice. I have a very, very strong connection spiritually to the city. I can feel the magic that exists there. So one thing that I've never done, I've never investigated there. So I want to ask you, are there any recommendations for a paranormal investigator coming to New Orleans to strengthen that connection to the spirits?
Well, there's a couple things that come to mind. There are actually some very good tours and ghost hunters here. This is a pretty haunted place. It's so rich in history, and there's so much passion here, and it's a really sexy place. So there's a lot of that energy floating around. Gede is all over the place, and
one of the times of the year I think we were thinking about coming down was for the Day of the Dead, right, Lissy? Didn't we say we were going to try and make it for that?
Yeah, absolutely. And we do two things. There's a fantastic Halloween festival at the Healing Center called En Bas de l'eau, which means beneath the waters. That shouldn't be missed by anybody. And then we do a huge Day of the Dead celebration in my temple. And we serve Gede, who's the spirit of death and sex and regeneration. And he's a real party guy. He's really entertaining. And hundreds of people come to this. And then we go to the cemetery near the peristyle, near the temple, and we feed the dead, and we have people of many different faiths saying prayers for the dead, and it's very moving, and we light candles and say the praise names of our beloved dead. But I highly recommend it, and everybody is welcome to come. I'll tell you, Edgar used to tell people that he was a little unnerved in New Orleans because there were so many spirits here, and it was kind of difficult to walk down the street, especially at night, because he would bump into them so much. And, I've definitely had that experience. The atmosphere is thick here.
Yes, it is. Yes. Well, Sallie, for the curious about voodoo, what would you say to them before they start their journey?
I would absolutely repeat Darius's advice, which is to start with what you know and let it just grow. I would say sincerity counts. Authenticity counts. Just be your authentic self. And a very hard thing for Westerners and Americans to do is to suspend your judgment of yourself. Really go deeply into what your body knows and what it's telling you and what your truths are, and just relax with it and be real.
Wonderful.
I would also say that the invisible world is beautiful, and it's vast, and it's powerful, and it's not what we should be afraid of.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Are there any new projects or lectures coming up that we can promote for you?
Well, we are, every day at the Healing Center is a new project and event, but we do have our focus right now on planning for our Halloween event, which is actually going to be on October 19th on Budlow, and we're steadily setting it up and booking it, and there'll be notices on our websites. And anybody can go to our website, www.neworleanshealingcenter.org, to catch up on information and what's happening. And they can go to my website for the Botanica at www.SyFy.Voodoo.com, or to my Facebook page for the Island of Salvation Botanica, and catch up on what we're doing and what we've got going on. We do ceremonies every Saturday night, and we are open to the public, and sincere seekers are welcome to come. So anybody who's coming to New Orleans, try to plan to be here on a Saturday night and check it out.
Sallie, thank you so much. It has been such a thrill talking to you tonight.
You all are very kind. Thank you.
We wish you the best, and we hope to talk again with you real soon. And for everybody out there, please check out Sallie Ann Glassman at fayvoodoo.com, and make sure you pick up her book, Voodoo Visions. Thank you again, Sallie, and have a wonderful weekend.
You too. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sallie. Have a great weekend. Good night.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. That was actually, I had a couple of aha moments. Did you have any of them?
Mm-hmm. It was like, you know what, like right now it's like so peaceful and it's so nice. I mean, it really just opened up so much of the misconceptions and so much of the negatives. I mean, there's none. I mean, out of everything that she said, a lot of the things that she brought forth are really beautiful and very profound things.
One of the I had picked up, and I wrote a couple of notes here for myself as we were going along in the interview. But one of the things that stood out to me was the line that she said about drop your identity for the divine, and then I think you had asked the question about surrender, that word surrender had come up on our previous show on Voodoo, and I think that was maybe that was from Noah Tysick when we were talking to him about it. And I started to put the two together, and as Sallie had mentioned, that it wasn't truly a surrendering, and she went on to explain what it really was. But I think what it means is you're not really surrendering yourself, because surrender would mean as though you're in a battle and you've lost, and now you have to give up of yourself to someone or something else. And that's not what I've learned, what Voodoo is all about. It's more what she was saying earlier in the interview about you're dropping your identity. You're getting rid of the egos. You're getting rid of who you are at sort of face value at the physical level for the divine, in front of the divine, so that you give of yourself to the religion, to the spirit, so that you can grow and continue to blossom. That phrase stuck out to me the most.
Well, you know what I got from that? It's discovery of yourself. It's discovery of yourself through the spirits. The spirits are the ones that kind of like guide you to who you really are and what you're really about. And I think it's like so pure. I mean, it's got to be the purest. When she talked about how, like in the Western world, that we have all of these things that we hide behind and we don't want anyone to know who we really are. It is so true. I mean, there's so many things that in your daily life that you're like, you keep to yourself. And this is completely the opposite. It is. It's dropping the ego. It's dropping your perception of yourself to find out who you really are. And that, to me, is amazing and very wonderful. And I think we all could benefit from something like that.
I think that's where most of the misconceptions come from. I think it's maybe this is more of a simplistic way of describing voodoo or expressing the feeling of voodoo, is that because of the dropping of your identity in front of the divine, for the divine, it sort of creates that feeling of weakness in someone. And I think for a majority of people, for the mass of people, the idea of religion is supposed to be strengthening, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And if you are to drop your identity for the divine, that's a symbol of weakness to someone. And I think that is where some of the misconceptions come in, whereas though it's sort of taboo, it's negative, it is getting rid of you as a person or as, even as an entity, you just getting rid of yourself to become part of something or someone else. I think that is what's frightening to people. It's the lack of control that people have. And within the other, majority of religions, it is mostly of, and I could be wrong, but I think to me it's mostly about control. A lot of the major mass religions out there, the organized religions, are more about the control aspect that you have, how you're able to control your life, control what you're believing, and controlling your faith, having that power within yourself. But voodoo is the same thing. Voodoo is empowering. It's just a matter of cleaning the slate, wiping yourself completely so that you fill yourself back up with the spirit in order to understand and live within the presence of the divine. I think that's where possibly some of the misconceptions, and I that could be the underlying simplest form, but I know a lot of the ceremonial ritual visions that people see, that's also scary to people, and so people think that is, the spells, the curses, the voodoo dolls, all that stuff, all the negativity that's out there. People portray that as the majority or as pretty much the whole aspect of voodoo, which it is really not. That coupled with the idea of giving of yourself is frightening to people.
Well, yeah. I mean, all of that comes from everything we've learned from the media, what we're told from day one. We put up these fronts, but it is. I mean, it's like shedding that heavy winter coat. It's taking that costume off and truly becoming who you really are. It's like a rebirth almost. It's like starting from square one, but you become powerful because you're yourself. You don't have to worry about maintaining a front, or you don't have to worry about the silly things that keep you from moving forward. I can't believe that that's bad. I just feel that is probably the purest form of empowering yourself, is to find out who you really are. And from what I've heard tonight, voodoo really does seem to focus on that. Sure, it's respect. It's respect of the spirits. It's respect of the ones that have been here before. And I really like that she pointed out the fact that the worship, they believe in God. They believe in the higher power. And the Loa are just simply the spirits who are the ones in the middle. People, I can only talk about Catholics. If there's something that you need, you'll make a petition to a particular saint. This is no different. I mean, it's basically the same thing. So now I truly understand where, as the religion has come and how the slave people had to hide it, behind a Catholic saint. It's basically the same thing. You are simply petitioning the higher power for what you want. It's just, I'm amazed, and I think it's simply beautiful.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, that goes along with the misconceptions, because this is a religion that was created by slaves who were brought over from Africa and within Cuba into the United States. In order for them to celebrate their religion, in order for them to participate in their prayers, in their rituals, in their songs, they had to be secretive. They had to go behind closed doors. And so from you being of an outsider and, being of a white male or white female, seeing this, you can only think, what's going on? There's got to be something, freaky or witchy or something that's going on. Why are they doing it in closed doors? Obviously, that there's some spells or curses that they're trying to put on. I think that is the misconception as well that has been, I guess, I'm trying to think of the word. I don't know if it's unfaithful to the religion or damaging, yes. But I think it's just done an unjust to the people and the religion itself. But in all of that, within everything else, it has still thrived. It has still grown, and it is continuing to grow. Everyone that we've talked to on this topic of voodoo has said that this has webbed in pretty much almost every aspect globally that you can think of. And Sallie Ann Glassman is a perfect example of that, because you would typically think that this is of a religion of people of color, but it has grown to people that you would not even normally think of. And you even said it in, I think it was your very first question, that she's from Maine and from a Jewish faith family. So, this is something that has grown tremendously over years and years, that we are not realizing how quickly and how strong and rich that this religion has thrived. And so if it has lasted this long, there should be something that we should be doing to learn more about it, to understand it better, and not keep it behind that label of taboo and of being wrong, or people call it quote unquote witchy, and evil, whatever it is. I think because it is so strong, we need to start growing up, and we need to start understanding these things that we're not understanding in order to live within the world. Maybe I'm just rambling on here. I'm trying to figure out my words as I'm going along, because I'm feeling so much about this right now. But it was just amazing to talk to her and have that enlightening experience and these aha moments that I had.
Well, you know what? I think for me, it kind of like illustrates the thought that we are all connected, regardless of what religion or regardless of what beliefs we have. For me, it points back to the fact that we are all one. It's kind of like that consciousness, and it's all about finding the best and finding the happiness for yourself. And this is a way to do it. I mean, the fact that all of these different colors and people and beliefs can come together and find that common thread that allows them to find that. And I think that's what came through for me.
One of the other things that I liked that Sallie had touched on and talked about was the differences between the spells and curses, or I don't know if I'm saying it right. Is it hoodoo is the difference, or that is within the hoodoo, and voodoo is something completely separate. I love the way that she created that metaphor, as far as if you're going to hoodoo, or I think it was Bokar. I can't remember what the name of that aspect that part of that aspect was, but I love the way that she said that it's almost like if you were to take a pill, that's instant gratification, instead of talking to someone or even going to like a psychologist or something and working through your problem to understand it better, to get a hold of it and to get a grasp of it, so that you learn from it, learn from whatever mistake it was or whatever was holding you back, to truly be able to move forward. That is sort of what she's explaining the voodoo religion as, whereas if you were to just go to someone who was to put a spell on someone or curse someone, whatever it is, it's almost just like taking a pill and it's instant gratification. It does not last that long as well, and you yourself do not get any spiritual intervention. It's more along the lines of a quick, here we go, that's it. whereas the voodoo religion is really empowering. It is really, it's like the water in a plant. It's actually helping you grow within itself.
Mhm. Well, I really love what she said about New Orleans, and I've told you this, I've told everybody this. It is definitely a spot of, you can feel it. You can feel the magic. You can feel the spirits there. And what she said about New Orleans at night, it is true. At night, the city takes on almost like a completely different kind of persona. It is just so thick, and it's so beautiful, and it's just something you can get lost in, and I can't wait to go back.
Well, you know, this just brought up a topic. Not a topic, but this just brought up something, Lucy. We had a comment that was sent to us, maybe it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, in regards to a show that we did. Do you know where I'm going with this?
Yes, I know. Go ahead.
Okay. What was that show that we did? What was it about?
It was the beginning of religion.
Okay. So we did a show about 3 weeks ago, I think it was, or maybe even longer than that, about the idea of where religion began. And we had come across a lot of articles and a lot of websites that had given comparisons or the idea, the theory, that possibly religions all started from one. And this one was basically of either alien creation or of a mix between alien and Egyptian. Now, we explored this topic. We talked about it on the show. We talked about it, you and I talked about it prior to, in the week leading up to it, in all of our research. And we do these shows to bring up the topics. You know, I'm not here right now even professing that tomorrow I'm going to go out and try and be a voodoo priest, or simply even just to be a part of the voodoo religion itself. I'm not. That's not me. I love the topic. I love talking about these things. It is something that interests both Lucy and I, and so we discuss it. It is not something that we are professing to be of what we, I guess, empower, or of something that we believe in ourselves. We believe in the religion of voodoo, but like I said, we're not going to go out and become part of the voodoo followers. Now, in our previous show that we did on the origin of religion, we had a comment from someone that said to us that they were upset at the fact that we were professing atheism. Now, I know we talked about atheism on that show. We talked about many different religions on that show and how they all sort of had similarities in the theories of their religion itself, their basic fundamentals of the religion itself. And we took that aspect then and brought it back to the idea of one. And the idea of one was, where did it all begin? And there were some articles and some research that we found that it could possibly be alien intervention, and or it could have all come from Egyptian culture and the hieroglyphics and the images and the writings that were discovered, and interpretations from experts and researchers out there. Now, to me, that's similar to the idea of how when you say and you talk about the voodoo religion, people automatically think that you are condemning other religions, or that you are bringing forward some sort of evil sorcery type of belief, and it's not. And this is not what Lucy and I do. This is not what we are trying to jam down anyone's throat, that, you know, voodoo is the be-all and end-all, or atheism is the be-all and end-all of everything. It is a topic of discussion, and if we can't discuss these things to better understand how they relate to us personally, us individually, and also how it relates to globally, everyone else. How can you live in a world if you do not understand fully what other people are thinking about, believing about, loving, understanding, educating on? If you don't understand anything and everything that's going on in the world, how can you live within that group? How can you possibly better understand your own faith if you don't understand somebody else's? To me, it doesn't make sense. And that's why we do these shows, and that's why we're doing this topic tonight. It's to understand not just what voodoo is all about, but actually maybe some of the aspects within voodoo you can take into yourself, into your heart, into your soul, and maybe make yourself a better person. That doesn't mean that you're actually going to be a worshiper of voodoo. It just means that you're taking the aspect of it. If you don't, then that's great, but at least you've gotten an idea of what voodoo is all about. I may be on a soapbox right now, Lucy, but I just wanted people to understand that. And I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Well, the comment really, really surprised me, and I will admit it angered me because the comment pretty much was like, well, you guys are promoting atheism, which was not what we did. I mean, at no point did we down anyone's religion. It was simply, like you said, a discussion. And in order to learn about yourself, what you believe in, you really need to look at other things where, to try to understand someone else, to learn is probably the most empowering thing in the world. And that's what we're doing here. We're not professing that, voodoo is the religion and we're going to go and we're going to, become devotees. We are simply learning. And that's what I'm hoping that our listeners are doing at the same time. What we're presenting is a different perspective. We wanted to find out what voodoo is about. We did one show, and it was really interesting, and we wanted to go a little bit further and find out more. It's a learning process, and if you close yourself up to learning other things, you will never move forward yourself. So for someone to come back and say, oh, well, you're doing this and you're doing that, only showed to me that you didn't listen. You didn't listen. And before you start to condemn something or someone, I think it's better to understand them first and to see where they're coming from. And that show on the beginnings of religion was really, for me, it was really a learning experience, because a lot of the things that we found and a lot of things that we talked about were things I didn't know and I didn't realize, and it gave me different views, but it didn't change my way of thinking or my beliefs. And I don't know, maybe I shouldn't assume that the person that listens to it would do the same, that, whatever's being presented to you in a matter of discussion that's not what we're doing. We're not trying to change anybody's point of view. We're just trying to discuss. These are things that we talk about. And to me, it's just simply bringing in other people into the discussion. And I don't understand where the fear comes from. I don't understand where the condemnation comes from. But that's part of what I'm trying to do. By learning and by researching, maybe it'll better help me to understand where this person is coming from, or where someone's coming from when they say, oh, no, voodoo is evil. Oh, no, being an atheist is wrong. Well, I don't understand. I don't understand what they believe, and I don't understand what they're thinking. So the only way that I can change that in myself is to learn more about it, and that's what we're trying to do.
And that's what Sallie's trying to do with her healing center. She's trying to educate not only just the New Orleans residents or the visitors of New Orleans, but she's trying to get the word out about the fundamental foundation of voodoo itself and what it calls for, what it brings to people, what it brings to your spirit and your soul, and what the spirit and soul can do for you. I think for people who have their own religion other than the voodoo or whatever it is, if you've got an opposite faith, that's your faith, and it's completely understandable. The idea of feeling threatened by other religions, I can understand why people feel that way. I don't understand why people then, create the hatred or create the war, I mean, or even the chaos. I mean, just recently in London, there's I'm going to take a breath. There is this craziness that is going on within a part of the Muslim faith that believes that anyone that is not of Islam is to go to hell. And that has been stated, and that is what they are most of them, well, not most of them, that's what I have seen being professed. And this hatred that is created is showing up on the news, as you've just seen this week, about the incident that happened in London. This is mind-boggling to me that someone who has a faith that they strongly believe in needs to portray it onto someone else and either maim, kill, hurt, whatever it may be, is not what religion is all about. I don't understand the aspect of creating a war based on your religious faith, because to me that's not what it's all about. Voodoo, you talk about people who put the perceptions and the misconceptions on that faith itself and talk about how evil that is. Look around the world. Look around the world and see what other religions are doing and what portrayal of hate and evil and anger that they're doing, and then come back and say, what has voodoo done to other people, to people within their faith or people outside of their faith? I don't think anybody can pick a topic or pick a story or pick an article. It is just horrifying to me that in this day and age, there are still people who have that mentality about voodoo. And again, I'm not here promoting voodoo. I'm bringing up the topic and I'm putting it out there because it is in black and white. There is no argument to it. I would love for someone, and I'll put that challenge out there, come to me or email us or go on our Facebook page and say, here's an incident, here's an article of something that of voodoo faith and religion has done, that was done of the faith to someone else. I haven't heard anything. Now, there could be, as with everything, and because we are all individuals, miscellaneous incidents and issues and stories will pop up. But can you compare it to what's actually going around in the majority of the world right now? Can you compare the two? To me, there isn't anything there.
Well, you know what? One of the most beautiful stories that she told tonight to me was when she talked about Edgar John Louis and how he went to this poor little girl who's in the middle of her world, and he bent down and he said hello and he smiled. He acknowledged her. He for one brief second, brought joy and smile to her. You know what? When I think about some of these other religions and other people involved with it, how many people do you see that are so entrenched in their own beliefs and their own way of thinking that they take the time to stop and to bring a smile to someone's face or to make someone feel good for a few minutes? It's not there with a lot of these other organized religions. And that's not saying that the organized religions are bad, but maybe they are just so focused on maybe one particular aspect, and they're so entrenched in what they believe. You know, it's missing the whole point. And the whole point always goes back to, as I said, it always revolves around love. It revolves around love for yourself, for love for other people, love for the earth, love for the higher power, whether you call him God or Yahweh or whoever. You know, it all revolves around love, and without that, I think we're lost.
You know, just to get to this point as well, and this is not a justification for what you've been hearing on the news and what's been going on, but it could also be the idea of, again, and I said this before, the threat to one's religion itself. And so if someone is feeling threatened that their religion is being condemned, or their religion is breaking up, or is lessening and weakening, the idea of not having a belief is something that's not fathomable to someone. And to feel as though your religion is going away means that you have no higher power to believe in, and therefore you are lost. I can understand that mentality in someone, but what I can't understand is how it's then transversed into the idea of hatred and the forcefulness of hatred upon someone else, and the hurt and the war and everything else that is caused by it. That I don't understand. You should be able to not prove your religion, but strengthen it from within, strengthen it with your followers, and talk about it and bring it out in the open and discuss it more, and not, be able to just grab a weapon and fight for it. That's not what this should be about. This should be about giving the understanding to someone else who may be misled, who may not understand what you believe in. But again, you have to understand that we are not all alike. As much as people say that we are alike, we're not. We're all individuals. We should not be all alike. Individually, we are different. And so there are things that I believe in, and there are things that I like or don't like that is very different than what somebody else likes or doesn't like or believes in. That's what the world is about. That is what this world was created for. I mean, if we didn't have that, we actually probably would not be sitting here. Lucy and I would not be sitting here talking to you right now if we did not have individualism. Nothing would have grown. But the idea of to be able to live and work and play in a world where there are others who are different is life. That's what it's all about. And if you feel threatened by that, then there's something individually wrong with you. It should not be, the religion itself should not be the label on that. It should be you individually itself. I think we've gone off on a weird tangent over here, Lucy.
I think what you just said was very well said, though.
Okay. All right. We've got about 17 minutes left. Was there anything else that you wanted to talk about that Sallie had mentioned during the interview?
No. You know what? It's just, I can't wait to listen to it again. I think it was very eye-opening, and I think it was very, very pleasant for me. And I'm hoping that our listeners feel the same way.
There were two other things that she did talk about that, I wrote down as little notes just for myself personally. One of the things that she mentioned was relationship between the visible and invisible, which I kind of liked. I mean, it really isn't completely profound to say, but for some reason it struck me enough to write that down. And I think I'm taking that towards the paranormal side of me. It's that relationship that I'm having with the visible and the invisible that I'm learning and growing with. And if that's a part of voodoo, then that's a part of me. And that's a part of what we both are and our listeners have been doing, is having that relationship between the visible and invisible. The other thing that I just wanted to say, because I wrote it down, was that when she talked about the future of voodoo, she talked about how when there are ceremonies being done, that a lot of people now are taking pictures or blogging or writing down and sending it to Twitter and Facebook. And she was mentioning that, that's pretty much, in this day and age right now, how the religion is spreading even more. But I don't know if it's just me being cautious, because I'm finding that when things go on Twitter and Facebook, people tend to, as you know, Lucy, you and I know this, people tend to comment and make comments and have a belief that they may not truly know, or even are saying things that they truly may not even feel, but just say it anyway. Some are hurtful, some are good. But I don't know if Twitter and Facebook maybe helping voodoo, simply because, and I always have this mentality that people hide behind Twitter and Facebook
yes.
to spew whatever it is that they want to, or to put out there in plain sight whatever it is, but would not and would never normally say that to someone in their face or even on the phone.
Right.
So I'm not sure if Twitter and Facebook are helpful. Yes, it's getting the word around and spreading it around faster, but I'm not sure if it's in a good way or a bad way, and so I'm a little cautious of that.
Well, as we know, I mean, Facebook and Twitter tend to make people very, very brave because they're hiding behind a keyboard. You can just tell by, I mean, look at how many people that post and they don't even put their own picture on. They you know, it's not allowing your true self to be there. So a lot of people do get brave when they get behind the keyboard because they feel, oh, I can say this and I can comment and I can say what I want and there's no consequences, which is true. I mean, no one knows who you are. No one knows where you're coming from. But it's not real. And then the other thing I just wanted to add, you know, when you mentioned the relationship between the seen and the unseen, that's the whole basis of us being paranormal investigators. It's that connection between what we know and what we can't see. You know, what else is there? Being an investigator is finding that connection to all the things we can't see. Sure, you can see apparitions, and sometimes the other side does make itself visible. But the whole basis is making that connection between the world that we're in and the world that's on the other side.
Yeah, so, I mean, I've taken already some aspects of voodoo and taken it to heart, and it's maybe just a life lesson. It doesn't mean that I'm a voodoo practitioner. It just means that I understand, I mean, from the little that we've done research and the few people that we have interviewed and talked to about the religion of voodoo, it's given me a better understanding. I mean, certainly it has for me, because I've had the same misconceptions growing up, because that's what I've seen in television and in movies and in magazines and such. And so learning about it right now within, you know, the last month or so has, you know, really been an eye-opening experience for me, and understanding even just the differences between voodoo and hoodoo, and also understanding the fundamental basic foundation of what voodoo is all about. It is, I would kind of say, is really not any different than any other fundamentals of any other, you know, theoretical religion.
I'm glad. I'm very glad.
That's great.
I've always had the fascination with voodoo, and I've always had that feeling that there's more to it than just what we see in the media. And this just confirms a lot of the things that I've always thought. And again, doesn't mean that I'm going to go out and I'm going to, you know, become a priestess, but it's not going to stop me from learning, and it's not going to stop me from finding out more. And it's just, what we learned tonight was absolutely amazing and wonderful, and I'm very happy.
We're trying to, I'm just going to say this one last thing. Both Lucy and I are trying to find the truth within the paranormal. And whatever that truth is, I don't know. I don't certainly know what that truth is. And I don't even think we'll ever know what the real truth is of the paranormal. But in the journey that we're making, as we're talking to people within every aspect of the paranormal field itself, and going out on the investigations that we do at locations to try and have that one-on-one communication, again, we're trying to find that answer that we're looking for. And if understanding what voodoo and is all about, and taking some aspects of that may click for us in the understanding of the paranormal and help us to maybe get to a further explanation or an understanding or part of an answer to the paranormal, I think that's beneficial to not only us but to everyone. I think we've said this before, Lucy. I think every topic or every field within the paranormal, whether you know it or not, consciously or not, is all intermingled. It's all interwebbed. Aliens and Bigfoots and spirits and you know, even zombies. It's all intermingled, and there is some sort of weird but yet spiritual connection between all of that. And I think that's where the concept of one comes from. And so if we're able to find answers within life, within learning of things and researching about, if we can learn one, we're able to travel down that path within that web to each and every single different topic within the paranormal field and possibly get maybe a small answer, a big answer, a aha moment within every, or maybe even just one area, one topic, field of the paranormal itself, I think is a better understanding. It's putting that extra piece of the puzzle into the mix and moving forward.
You know I'm smiling because that's exactly what I was going to say.
Get out of my head.
You're in my
You're always
head
in my
again.
head. Yeah, I know. All right, do you want to get on to... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, again, in my head, let's go to the Paranormal Review Radio Fan of the Week.
All right.
This week, it is from, and I see Robin Marie's in the chat room. Hi, Robin. This person is from Boston, Massachusetts also. Our Paranormal Review Radio Fan of the Week is Teresa Skalman, and she's from Boston, Massachusetts. She likes cash. I love that.
Okay.
She likes travel, mythology, horseback riding. She likes Grumpy Cat. Yay! Tim Curry, and I just want to say, Tim Curry reportedly had a stroke yesterday, so we're sending wishes that he recovers very well. Reports say that he is doing well and he's recovering. She likes Doreen Virtue, and of course she likes Paranormal Review Radio. And thank you so much, Teresa, for being a fan. Thank you for posting, and thank you for listening. Congratulations, dear.
Yeah, thanks, Teresa, and congratulations. And don't forget, if you want to be a Paranormal Review Radio Fan of the Week, just like us on Facebook at Paranormal Review Radio.
Okay. Well, you know what? All of this talk tonight really did bring up one important thing. And the only way to overcome fear of the unknown is to learn about it. There is so much that we do not understand, or we don't know how it works. And because of this, we tend to view the unknown as frightening, wrong, and sometimes just plain evil. Voodoo is one of these things. Now, will it ever become accepted as a legitimate religion? Only time will tell. But through education and discussion, it may. Many accept so-called other religions with no problems. And you know what? Scientology comes to mind when I think about this. So I got Voodoo with its rich and strong history. We want to thank Sallie Ann Glassman for joining us tonight and helping us learn so much tonight. So let's talk about what we don't know or what we think we know. Did you know that according to a survey done back in 2003 by the Roper Organization, that 33 million Americans may be alien abductees? Our guests next week have written an amazing book that looks at the subject of alien abduction. People who have never met each other, they all seem to be sharing experiences with very startling similarities. Now, are the abductions increasing, or are we just starting to talk about what's happening to us and why is it happening? Rob and Trish McGregor will be joining us next Friday night to talk about their book, Aliens in the Backyard, UFO Encounters, Abductions, and Synchronicity. Now, if you thought you knew about this subject, or even if you don't, you need to be here next week as we talk about the visitors who really may be closer to you than you realize and what they've been doing to us. We want to thank everyone for listening and joining us every single week. You know, you have made this a true gathering of friends. Anthony, thank you so much for another fun show. So, until next week, Parapeeps, keep watching the skies and have a paranormal week. Good night.
Have a great Memorial Day weekend. Good night, everybody.
Paranormal Review Radio. Paranormal Review Radio.